Hey everyone, so you're getting really bad, buggy gaming performance and you're wondering what the cause could be. Could it be your GPU, your motherboard, your RAM, your power supply unit, or your CPU? Well, I wanted to talk about the CPU first because it's actually quite unlikely that your CPU has an actual hardware fault. Usually, the CPU is dead or it's alive. It's quite a binary thing. It's not that it slowly fails. Obviously, if you get loads of blue screen of deaths and it does all point to the CPU being the issue, then yeah, by all means swap that out. But it's more likely, if you do think there's a CPU issue, there's more likelihood there's actually like a CPU bottleneck issue. And what that actually means is your CPU is a little bit too weak for your graphics card. And at the time of filming, Battlefield 6 is out, and what many people have noticed is even some really good like 12-core CPUs like the Ryzen 5900X are actually a little bit too slow for their overall system. So they play in Battlefield 6, they're in the middle of a really busy map with loads of players, and their CPU is completely maxed out, but not their graphics card. And the best way of knowing if this is applying to you is by running an FPS tracker such as the one built into Steam, which you can enable via the settings or using something like MSI Afterburner, and I'll put some links in the description for how to actually set that up. But by doing that, what you can see is your CPU and your GPU usage, and if your CPU is constantly sort of 60, 70 or 80% in use, and your GPU is maybe below 80 or 90% in use, that then suggests a CPU bottleneck, so your CPU is too weak for the rest of your system. And in that case, you could try overclocking the CPU, but to be honest, actually changing the CPU to a better model is probably the better way to go. But if you've checked that and your CPU usage is fine and you're still getting issues in games, there's a few other things you should check. Firstly, I would always uninstall and reinstall the drivers. I would use a program called Display Driver Uninstall to actually wipe all of the GPU drivers. Then go onto your graphics card maker's website, such as Nvidia or AMD, and actually download the drivers fresh from there. Get the very latest and install them. And then make sure you've got the very latest game updates as well, and try that again because that might actually help. But if you're still getting stutters, the second thing to check is that your GPU might be too weak for the rest of your hardware. And I mentioned earlier, if your CPU is too weak, then you might get your GPU, being less than 80 or 90% in use. But if you're finding your GPU is 100% in use nearly all of the time, then it's working as hard as it can, and obviously it can't work any harder because it's maxed out. 95 to 100% is considered maxed out. So in that case, you might then want to consider a GPU upgrade. But if that also seems fine and you're actually getting crashes and things like that, the next thing I would actually try is to remove your GPU and remove the power cables, then put the GPU back in, and that's called reseating, and sometimes that can actually help, weirdly enough. Then I would actually put the power cables back in. And if, for example, your GPU needs, 2 8-pin connectors being run to it, make sure you run in 2 separate cables. Don't use that weird pigtail end because sometimes that can actually starve the GPU of power, so try not to do that. And since we're on the topic of power, you could also have an issue with your power supply unit because, that's supplying power to your motherboard and your CPU and your GPU. And if your power supply unit is failing, then you're going to get issues, especially, not just in games, but you might get issues when browsing the internet and watching YouTube. So actually, if you're getting issues generally, you might also want to consider checking the PSU, although unfortunately that's quite a complicated fix because you might need to literally swap out the PSU and that's quite time consuming. But if you tried everything else, then that could actually be the issue. And there's many other potential issues which are too long to cover in this particular video, but if you still need help, please drop me a comment and I'll do my best to help. And if you enjoyed this video, please click the thumbs up button and please subscribe to see more short videos like this. Thanks for watching.